Welcome to 100 Yards Football. Today is my NFL Legend special. Today I'm going to highlight Willie Davis, defensive end, the Green Bay Packers, by way of Grambling State University. So if you like the video today, please come in and share it. I'm Mr. Football, Vincent Turner. Well, all I can say is the swag is in the house. Grambling State University, Willie Davis. When you talk about special football players, man, on any level from the 50s to the 60s to the 70s to the 80s to the 90s, even in the new millennium, Willie Davis needs to have a seat at the altar. This man was a special football player out of Texarkana, Arkansas. But let me start with this. When everybody talk about that great dynasty of the Green Bay Packers back from 1960 to 1968 under Vince Lombardi, they won 5 NFL championships and 2 Super Bowls. They always talk about Ray Nitschke. They talk about Forrest Gregg. They talk about Bart Starr. They talk about Max McGee. They talk about Henry Jordan. They talk about Jerry Kramer. They talk about Paul Horney. They talk about everybody except for Willie Davis and that Green Bay Packers defense. That's unusual because make no mistake, Willie Davis led that Green Bay Packers defense. And if it wasn't for so much the Green Bay Packers defense being at a high level back in the early 60s leading up to 1968, you could talk about all those other gentlemen I just mentioned. But Willie Davis was a mainstay. But let me talk about Willie Davis. He's from the 870. Comes out of a little small neighborhood in Texarkana, Arkansas. He grew up with a young man by the name of Cyrus Herbert Hunt. Before the young man even got to Grambling, he was dealing with history because Mr. Hunt was the first Black African American to be accepted in the School of Law at University of Arkansas. So greatness was already there for Willie Davis. He picked a great coach, the best of some people ever done it, Eddie Robinson. But when Willie Davis got recognized was the 1955 season when he played at Grambling. He played offensive tackle and defensive end. Eddie Robinson said he's the best football player that ever coached on the defensive side of the ball. And the reason Eddie Robinson said that, Eddie Robinson said he was a thumper. When he hit you, it was like being hit by a truck. But Willie Davis came on the scene in that Orange Blossom Classic 1955, Florida A&M and Grambling. Grambling won that football game 28-21. But Florida A&M had 2-star running backs. One was named Al Frazier, who just recently passed a year and a half ago here in Lawrenceville, Georgia, which is about 20 miles from where I live at here in Douglasville, Georgia. And the other one was the great Willie Gallimore. But you know what? When Grambling had that great win, 20-21, going back, reading Cliff Notes, reading about that game, they said that the young man out of the 870, Texarkana, Arkansas, Willie Davis was the best player on the field. Then he went into the 1956 NFL draft, round 15, pick 181, drafted by the Cleveland Browns. Had to go do his military service before he even got into the league in 1958. Cleveland decided to trade him to Green Bay, and the rest is history. Willie Davis became, as we call him, the thumper, the guy that set the tone for the Packers defense. And that skill level was off the chain. It was at a high level. His instincts, A+. The explosive leverage. Go back and watch the old school film, A+. The tackling ability. When he hit you, he made sure that you was going down. The aggressiveness, A+. The burst off the end as a DN, A+. The initial quickness along the line of scrimmage, A+. The acceleration for a defensive end, A+. And he was always a gentleman that had that football IQ, FBI, that can keep and diagnose any alignment on the offensive line playing DN. If they was keeping sacks as a statistic back then, which they wouldn't, it was to believe that Willie Davis would have ended up with 120 career sacks. He averaged almost 10 sacks in his 10 seasons with Green Bay. But I'm going to tell you when Willie Davis really impressed me. As a 6-year-old, sitting in my father's room, in my father's living room, and my mother's, 763 Dunn Avenue in Memphis, Tennessee, watching Super Bowl I, when Willie Davis and the Packers came out in the second half and held the Kansas City Chiefs, led by Len Dawson and Otis Taylor, and held that offense to 0 points and 53 yards of total offense. In Super Bowl I, that Green Bay defense accumulated 6 sacks. Only allowed 4 rushing first downs in the game. And Willie Davis, from all indications, stat-wise, had 7 tackles and 1.5 sacks in that game. They talk about Bart Starr being the MVP that day. But go back and look at the game film. The young man from the 870, Texarkana, Arkansas, should have been the MVP. He set the tone in the second half. And Green Bay's defense shut down the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl I. This was a great football player. But what I came more impressed about Willie Davis is what he did after the game. After his retirement in 1968, he went back, in 1969. While he was playing with the Packers, he got his undergraduate degree at Grambling. Then he was working on his master's, business administration, and received it from one of the best schools in the country, the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Willie Davis had a vision. That little country guy from Texarkana, Arkansas, the 870. And then I look what he done after his career. The boards that he was on, Dow Chemical, Johnson Controls, Kmark, LA Gear, Manpower, Sarah Lee. He owned 5 radio stations. He was president of All Pro Broadcasting. Then look what his children did. He has a son, Dwayne, that became a great actor, Dwayne Davis. Unnecessary Roughness. And he had a daughter, Lori, who's one of the big-time attorneys in LA in the Los Angeles children court system. And then his grandson, Wyatt Davis, out of the Ohio State, who's a starting right guard right now for the Minnesota Vikings. That's why it's so special to bring up these great players and these great men of their past. And Willie Davis, make no bones, not only performed at a high level on the playing field, but man, he did his thing after his career was over. He has set the tone for a lot of other players to follow. And he played under arguably the greatest coach in college football, Eddie Robinson, arguably the greatest coach in pro football, Vincent Lombardi. And I take comments from both gentlemen, and both of them had this to say about Willie Davis. Willie Davis was an individual that always looked out for everybody else and wanted everybody else to get along. He was that guy that would take a step forward and become that leader and really bring together races. Vince Lombardi said what he liked about Willie Davis, it wasn't what he did on the playing field. It's what he did in the locker room. See, back when Willie Davis played, back from 60 to 68 when that Green Bay Packers run was going. He was a gentleman, stood up in the locker room and said, hey, let's bring this culture together. I don't judge nobody by their color or race. That's why Green Bay has so much success. Because, honest be told, 40% of the Green Bay Packers roster had never been around African Americans when they got to the Packers during the 60s. And Willie Davis was the ambassador that brought all those players together. From the 870, Texarkana, Arkansas. He's one of the best, one of the most successful businessmen after playing in the NFL. Just check his resume. And it's been an honor, a blessing. I can't even say no more. When I talk about situations like this, stories like this, it makes me proud. Lord, it makes me proud. When Willie Davis went to the Green Bay Packers in 1960, I was born in July 1960. And when I was able to watch football starting at the age of 5 that I can recalculate, I remember one thing in Super Bowl I. The man you see on the screen was a player, and he made it happen. I'd like to give special thanks to Logan Landers today for making it happen, my producer. So, my final words about Mr. Willie Davis. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee in an era in the mid-60s that there was a record company by the name of Stack Records. The label mates was Otis Redding, Isaac Hayes, Sam and Dave. And Sam and Dave had a song, and this is what I think about Willie Davis. Coming to you on a dusty road. Good loving, I got a truckload. When you get it, you got some. So don't worry, because I'm coming, because I'm a soul man. Da-da-da, da-da-da. I'm a soul man. I'm a soul man. Da-da-da, da-da-da. And the lyrics were wrote by the great David Porter, who I grew up 2 houses from, and today I'm still best friends with his son, Gregory Porter. Those were the times. And Willie Davis was one of the most outstanding football players that made my life very special. The last thing about Willie Davis before I go today, and I almost forgot, because Willie Davis was a soul man. Played in 138 consecutive games. 2 Super Bowl championships, the first 2. Super Bowl I, Super Bowl II. 120 sacks as they was keeping stats. 5-time NFL champion. All-Pro 5 times. NFL 1960 All-Decade team. 22 recovered fumbles, but the most award. When you play this game in the National Football League, every pro football player tell you that the epitome is this. You can have all the awards, you can win all the championships, but you measure by your peers. Willie Davis voted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1981. Coming to you on a dusty road. Good loving, I got a truckload. I'm a soul man. Willie Davis. I've been your host, Vincent Turner. So if you like the video today, please come in and share it. The SWAC in the house. Grambling State University. Eddie Robinson. Doug Williams. Trumaine Johnson. Everson Walls. Willie Brown. Albert Lewis. Y'all be blessed.